Hey guys, today I will be making my new updated 2020 presidential election map prediction between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. So as I typically do, I'm going to start off by filling in the solid Trump and Biden states just to get them out of the way. And my categorizations are my typical categorizations, and if you don't know, they are solid is 15% or more, likely is 7 to 15%, lean is between 2 and 7%, and then tilt is between 0 and 2%. So first, I'm going to start off by filling in the Trump states, and these are the only solid states that I think Trump are going to have victories in with a solid margin of 15% or more in favor of the current president. So these are the states of Idaho, Wyoming, both Dakotas, the 1st and 3rd district of Nebraska I think is definitely going to be solid for President Trump, the state of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, as well as Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Mike Pence's home state of Indiana. I do think that at this point, this state is going to be a solid state for President Trump. He does tend to outperform the polls in some of the more conservative states, but that he may not be polling by pretty strong numbers in right now. Indiana, he technically does poll with only a likely margin over Joe Biden, but I think that is definitely going to increase on election night. I think he's going to win by a larger margin. So next we have the solid Biden states. Most of the West Coast is going to be solid for Joe Biden, as well as Barack Obama's home state of Illinois and the state of Hawaii. Most of the Northeast is also solid for the former vice president as well. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, his home state of Delaware. He served as a senator from this state for over 36 years before becoming Barack Obama's vice president. The state of Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the state of New York, as well as the 1st District of Maine. So after filling in the solid Democratic and Republican states, Joe Biden currently has 183 electoral votes, and Trump is trailing the former vice president with just 80 electoral votes. Now I'm going to move on to the likely states first with Trump, because these are states that I think are almost definitely going to go to the president, but I do not think that he's going to see too strong of a margins in these states. These are the states of Montana, Utah, Kansas, Missouri, Mississippi, South Carolina. These states, I think that President Trump is not going to win with a solid margin, but I think that they are almost definitely going to go to the president, as well as the at-large vote in the state of Nebraska. I think that at-large President Trump is going to have a likely victory here in the state of Nebraska. So this does put President Trump up to 122 electoral votes, still trailing Joe Biden with just his solid states. Now, taking a look at the solid states for the former vice president, first we have the states of Colorado and New Mexico. These two states, I think, are going to be definitely much more solid for the Democratic Party than it was for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I think that Joe Biden is definitely going to outperform her numbers here, as she only won these states by around 5 to 6% in 2016, which definitely was not a very good showing for her in these two states. And in the 2020 Senate races here, the Democrats are expected to pick up a seat in Colorado, as well as retain their seat in New Mexico. Of course, Ben Ray Lujan is expected to win his race here in New Mexico, and John Hickenlooper is going to win his race in Colorado against Cory Gardner. At this point, Hickenlooper is the very popular governor of the state. He basically has this race locked down right now for the Democrats. And another likely state, the Maine at-large vote, I think is also going to be likely, definitely stronger for Joe Biden than it was for Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. And I think that New Hampshire is also going to be a likely state. The state might have only voted for Hillary Clinton by 0.4% in 2016. That was just because she was very unpopular in 2016 among the entire country, but she was especially unpopular here in the Northeast. Of course, New Hampshire neighbors Vermont, and they do tend to vote pretty similarly. A lot of the voters in New Hampshire do vote pretty similarly to those in Vermont from New Hampshire. And of course, Hillary Clinton was very unpopular in the state of Vermont. This was, of course, Bernie Sanders' home state, and a lot of them were going to vote for Bernie and not Clinton. And this, I think, did spread to New Hampshire, where she only won the state by less than 1%. However, in 2020, Joe Biden, a much more popular candidate, he might have only placed 5th place here in the Democratic primary in New Hampshire, but he's definitely much more popular here than Hillary Clinton, and thinking that he is going to pull off a likely victory here, and that is what the polls are currently showing for him to do on election night. The state of Virginia is also going to go into the likely Biden column. This is just because I think that this state at this point, the Republicans are basically dead in the state. They have not been able to win a statewide race here in the last decade. So they have not been able to win any statewide race in the state of Virginia in the last decade. This used to be a Republican stronghold. The south of the state, the southern region of the state of Virginia, is still pretty solid for the GOP. However, most of the northern Virginian voters have switched from being conservatives to liberals at this point, as they are aligning more with the voters in Washington, D.C. and the state of Maryland. So 13 more electoral votes added into the Biden column right here. And we also have the state of Minnesota. I think that Minnesota might have been pretty close just a couple weeks ago after the Republican National Convention, where many were doubting whether Joe Biden would still be able to even carry the state. But he has proven that he is doing very well here. 2 A+ rated pollsters or polls show him up 16 and 17 points in the state of Minnesota. That is a big margin, considering that Hillary Clinton carried the state by 1.5% in 2016. Now, the difference between Biden and Trump, or Biden and Clinton, is that Clinton neglected the Rust Belt. She just assumed that these states had not flipped for the GOP in decades. Over 2 decades, these states had not gone to any Republican, and she just assumed that she would win all 4 of these states in the blue wall. But of course, we saw that this wall crumbled for her in 2016 on election night by very small margins, and I think that this was honestly a huge mistake for her. She did not visit the state of Wisconsin for the last 5 months until the election. The last time she was in Wisconsin before November 2016 was all the way back in the month of June. This is before she even won the nomination. So her negligence of these 3 states and Minnesota did hurt her. Her choices did lose her the election. She definitely should have spent more time in these regions, but Joe Biden, I don't think, is making the same mistake again. He's just piling on ads in these states, and he's doing more and more ad buys out of these states, because it is honestly these states that are going to win him the election. And what's good for Joe Biden is that Clinton, a very polarizing figure, a very unpopular figure, around 20 or 10 or 20 points, or 15 points, I think, more unpopular than Joe Biden is right now. She only lost these 3 states by less than 1%. She still lost them, but it was a really small margin. And in my opinion, I do think that if Joe Biden did nothing in these states, just like Clinton, if he campaigned the same way, just because he's a more popular figure and the third-party voters have a less of an influence in this election, I think Joe Biden would still carry all of 3 of these states, however by a very small margin. But due to Biden's efforts in these states, I'm going to give the state of Michigan to Joe Biden as a likely state. This state has been pulling pretty solidly for him for months now, and Michigan, honestly, in my opinion, is just in the bag right now for Joe Biden. It's currently his state to lose. It's not Trump's state to lose anymore. He might have won it 4 years ago, but he's not going to win it now, in my opinion. I think that something drastic would have to happen. Joe Biden would have to do something horrible, or Trump would have to really do something that would get a lot of voters on his side. But I really don't see what those things could be. There are debates in a couple of days, just 6 days or 5 days when this video is out. 5 days on the 29th, the first presidential debate for 2020 will occur. I think those are going to be very interesting. I think we're going to have the 2 worst debaters ever on the debate stage for the presidential election. And I mean presidential debates, so Sarah Palin does not count. But Joe Biden, he did used to be a good debater, but in 2020, in the Democratic primary, he did show that he's not as great as he was before at it. But, towards the end, he did get a little bit of, momentum going in the debates. So Michigan, I am going to give to Joe Biden as a likely state, and that is all of the likely states on this map. Now, moving into the lean state categorizations, I think that I'm going to start off with President Trump here, the state of Texas. I am going to give Donald Trump the state of Texas with a lean margin. I think that a tilt margin is not too likely. He is only polling in the lead by a tilt margin, and the Republican Party does always, in the last 3 elections, they have underperformed the polling numbers in the state of Texas. Mitt Romney underperformed it, John McCain underperformed it, and even Donald Trump underperformed the polls. If he were to underperform the polls again, Trump would lose this state for the first time in 4 decades for the Republican Party. So Joe Biden is doing well. He has set up a campaign office there. I believe he's putting in a little bit of money into the state, but you can't really just vote by mail just because you want to. You have to have a reason there. You could just vote if you wanted to, but I think that a lot of people are not going to do that. They are not going to go through the trouble of requesting a ballot, and I think that this is definitely going to benefit the Republicans. So I do think that the state of Texas is going to be a lean state for the president, as well as the state of Iowa. Iowa and Texas voted pretty similarly in 2016, and they're polling pretty similarly right now for the president in these two states as well. But I do think that Trump was only leading in the state by 3 points on election night in 2016. He carried Iowa by 9 points. So I think that Iowa has become more of a red state now. It did go to Barack Obama both times, but Trump flipped it. It was a huge shift to the right by over 10 points in 2016. But in 2020, I don't see Joe Biden winning the voters here in Iowa back. So Iowa is going to go into the lean Trump column. And the final lean Trump state, in my opinion, is the state of Alaska. Now, this state was not safe for him in 2016. He only won the state by 14.4%. However, in 2020, the numbers here are much, much closer. Some polls even show him only up 1 or 2 points in the state of Alaska. I think this is definitely not a good sign for the president. Alaska, a state that has been so faithful to the GOP, is now expected to only go to him with a lean margin. I could definitely see it going into the tilt zone, but I think that right now it's going to stay a lean categorization. So this does put Donald Trump at 169 electoral votes, and Joe Biden still at 242. We're going to take a look at his lean states right now, and these states are going to get him over 270 electoral votes. First, the state of Nevada. I did not put Nevada into the likely column as I have done before. I think Nevada is going to be a little bit closer. Biden is not doing as well here as he was in midsummer, and Trump's numbers are rising here a little bit. But definitely they're much better for the Democrats than they were in 2016. In 2016, Clinton was down 0.8 points in the polls in the state. She won it by 2.4%. So yes, that was a 3.2% swing in favor of Hillary Clinton, but still it was not a good margin for her in the state of Nevada. But Joe Biden leads by around 6 to 7% here on average. It's been his average for quite a bit of time now in this state. But I think that Nevada is going to be a lean state for Joe Biden. Don't see it crossing the 7-point mark. I don't think that's too likely. But I am going to put the state of Nevada into the lean column for the former vice president. And the state of Arizona as well. I think this is going to be another flip for Joe Biden. The state of, not Alaska, the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona, I think that right now Joe Biden is doing better than any Democratic candidate has in the last 2 decades. The last time a Democrat won, of course, was Bill Clinton in 1996. After this, the GOP has held the state ever since. How the demographics here are shifting towards the left, and the state of Arizona is currently expected to go to Joe Biden. I apologize for that, but the state of Arizona is currently expected to go to the former vice president by around 4 to 5 points, so it's going to go into the lean Biden column, putting him up at 259 electoral votes. Another likely state or lean state on this map is the state of Wisconsin. State of Wisconsin, I do think is going to outperform for Joe Biden than Pennsylvania, and I think he's definitely going to win this state. He has been pulling ahead here for the entire election cycle, just like Minnesota, Michigan, Arizona, and North Carolina, as we'll see in just a couple of moments. But the state of Wisconsin has been pretty solid for Joe Biden for quite a bit of time, and 2016, the polls did get it wrong here, but in 2020, I don't think that's the case. Joe Biden just at face value is much more popular than Hillary Clinton, and I think that even if he had the same plan that Clinton had in 2016 for the state of Wisconsin, I think he's still going to carry the state. State of Pennsylvania as well. This is Joe Biden's birth state. He was born here in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is also going to flip for the former vice president, giving him 20 electoral votes, putting him over 270 electoral votes. So he's now at 289, and 290 is going to come from the 2nd District of Nebraska. I think it is not going to be a likely margin. I think it's going to be a lean margin just because I do think that the polls are going to get a little bit closer. I think the numbers are not going to be as strong for Biden here as the polls indicate. And now we have the 2nd District of Maine, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida as the only tilt states on this map. I'm going to be filling in the tilt states for Trump first. These are, not too surprisingly, the states of Ohio and the state of Georgia. Ohio, Georgia, they're both polling pretty similarly right now, both around 1 to 2% in favor of the president, and his lead has become more stable in these two states. However, definitely the demographics and just the candidates that these states are going to vote for, I think, is going to be much closer than it was in 2016. These states were not too close 4 years ago against Hillary Clinton. She lost by around 8% in Ohio and around 6% in Georgia. However, in 2020, I think the races here are definitely going to become closer. I think Biden does have a chance at these two states if he really did make a strong play for them. But right now, I don't see that happening, and I really don't see it working too well. So these two states, tilt states for President Trump. He is now at 203 electoral votes. The 2nd District of Maine currently, I think, is going to go to Joe Biden for one electoral vote. So Joe Biden is going to flip the entire state of Maine now, flipping back the 2nd District. Hillary Clinton was the first candidate here to, first Democratic candidate to lose the state of Maine, the 2nd District, not winning the entire state, all 4 of its electoral votes, for the first time in decades. And the state of Florida is also going to be a tilt Biden state, in my opinion. Currently, he is up by around 2 points here. I think that's basically going to be what the margin is. Florida's always very close, but he is currently expected to have that $100 million ad buy funded by Bloomberg. So Florida, I'm going to keep in the Biden column for now. Definitely could see things changing, but right now Biden's lead is not as large as it was before, but it is still pretty stable. You don't see polls where Trump is leading in this state. The final state, the state of North Carolina. I do think that this is going to be the closest state in the entire election, and I really don't know which way to categorize this. I think that based on raw votes, I do think that Joe Biden would carry this state. I think that if everybody voted here, I do think Biden would win. But it's just that there is a lot of, the amount of voter suppression that occurs in the South really is crazy to think about, because the Republicans are able to hold on some of these closer states like Georgia, North Carolina, and even South Carolina because of because of the voter suppression that they impose on people of color in these states, because people of color, they're almost 96% chance they're going to vote for a Democrat. So, black votes are getting sent back at a rate 4 times more than voters, white voters. So, there hasn't been too much of votes cast, so we're going to have to wait for some more data, but in my opinion, I'm going to put it into the Biden column, because I do think that if every vote was counted fairly, I think that Joe Biden would carry this state, and the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think, will spark some more voters to want to vote for Biden in this state, just so that he has a stronger victory and won't give the GOP a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court, which I think would be devastating for liberals across the entire country, and could definitely shape our country for the next couple of decades, because they serve for life. So that is it for this video. Joe Biden currently expected to win on this map with 335 electoral votes, outperforming Barack Obama's 2012 margins, and Donald Trump expected to win just 203 electoral votes, 103 electoral votes less than what he won 4 years ago. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like as well as subscribing to my channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, along with any suggestions for videos you'd like to see from me in the future, and I will see you in the next video.